Hello, everyone. I am ZHAO Chuang. Let's talk about Rosana the Miragaia. Miragaia is a stegosaurian with a peculiar look. It possessed numerous bony plates densely arranged on its back. The bony plates on the second half of its body have been restored according to some current theories. Its fossil mainly shows the front half of its body, that is, the bony plates on its neck. When this dinosaur was first discovered, what impressed people most was its quite long neck, much longer than the necks of general stegosaurians found so far. Its neck was densely covered with 2 rows of bony plates. When it was first discovered, people thought these bony plates were arranged sparsely, distributed all the way to the middle of the back, and located relatively far apart from each other. Now, we know that this dinosaur's bony plates were arranged uniquely. Unlike other stegosaurians, the 2 rows of its bony plates were at a certain distance. These bony plates turned sideways, one pressing against the other, like fish scales. Its neck was very long. We know that some stegosaurian specimens, such as the famous juvenile Stegosaurus sophi, also had very long necks, but not nearly as long as Miragaia's. Its head fossil is incomplete. So, we reconstructed the appearance of its head based on its close relative, the Stegosaurus. Along the lower part of its long neck, and both sides was a large structure, called gular armor composed of osteoderms, which might play a specific protective role for the neck. Generally speaking, this position is where herbivorous dinosaurs are easily attacked, and more fatal. This dinosaur had relatively delicate scales, with some larger scales scattered between these small ones. You can observe this in some stegosaurian fossils. The limbs of Miragaia are not very well preserved, but we can still infer what its limbs looked like. Its forelimbs were shorter, and its hindlimbs were longer. When walking, its legs were vertical, which was different from many dinosaurs, because this dinosaur's body was relatively bulky and required for limbs to bear weight. Usually, when people see a stegosaurian, they tend to think it is a relatively flat animal. But if observing from above, you can see that stegosaurians are actually very sturdy, especially with a very broad pelvis. This is quite similar to their close relatives, the ankylosaurs. It had such a wide pelvis, indicating that its body was very sturdy. There were 5 fingers on its hands, and 3 toes on its hind limbs, the toenails were hoof-shaped, and the entire foot was relatively round. According to its footprints, you can observe that the sole of its foot is similar to this. The 3 toes were not separated as seen on fossils, but formed a hoof-like structure. Miragaia had a tail similar to Stegosaurus, which was relatively flexible, and possibly had, for long spikes at the end. I said possibly because we currently do not know the bony plates on its body. Only one bony plate has been found near its tail, which is relatively slender. Its bony plates were quite similar to those of Twojangosaurus, but its bony plates were more numerous than the latter. Now, we know that the bony plates of Miragaia may be one next to another. These slender bony plates were arranged down to form 2 airtight walls. The bony plates at the base of the tail were the longest. When it was alive, a keratinous sheath wrapped outside, which made the bony plates more elongated. What the epidermis of stegosaurian bony plates looked like had always been controversial. However, in recent years, based on a relatively intact bony plate fossil of Hesperosaurus, it can be determined that its epidermis was composed of a keratinous structure, with a sharp end and a certain defense capability. The surface was basically flat but had very subtle textures, just like what this model looks like. Good, the above concludes our introduction to Rosana the Miragaia. Thank you all.